In this video, we'll take a look at a new feature of Plait, pool workers. Existing users will be familiar with Plait's concept of organization. While some providers are represented by a single organization within the Plait database, others divide their resources between several linked organizations. Organizations can be used to split resources geographically, for example, one for each town or city that your service covers, or by specialism, one for your elderly care service, another for your disabled service, and so on. For providers offering supported living services, there may be a single organisation for this specialism, or perhaps even one organisation for each residence. How many organisations a single provider will use can depend upon many factors. Perhaps the most common of these is how your care coordinator's responsibilities are divided up. If your service has a concept of patches or teams, each scheduled by one or more care coordinators or care managers, it probably makes sense to utilise a single organisation for each team. In Plait, organizations are structured hierarchically. Each care provider that uses Plait will have its own top-level organization, and perhaps also a number of child organizations. Child organizations will generally inherit system-wide settings from the relevant top-level organization, but can override individual settings as necessary. Let's take a look at Plait's sample data organization, DemoCare. This diagram shows the structure of DemoCare within the Plait database. Notice how there are two geographical organizations, Southern Area and Northern Area, and a specialist supported living service that has its own organization. Currently, that service has only one residence, Hempstead Lodge, which has its own organization as well. Having a parent organization for supported living makes particular sense if there is a chance of additional residences being added later. Next, we should briefly discuss the relationship between service users, care workers, and organizations. All service users belong to an organization, but service users cannot belong to parent organizations. They can only belong to organizations that have no children, which are sometimes described as leaf organizations. In the case of DemoCare, this means that service users can belong to Northern Area, to Southern Area, and to Hempstead Lodge, but not to either the top-level DemoCare organization or to the supported living organization. Care workers also belong to an organisation, but the leaf restriction does not apply, so care workers can appear anywhere in the organisation hierarchy. Generally speaking, care workers will be assigned to the organisation that sits at or immediately above all of the services that they typically support. This is because, historically, care workers could only be assigned to an event if their organisation was the same as, or an ancestor of, the service user's organisation. So, in the case of DemoCare, care workers who only visit Northern Area services would be assigned to Northern Area, those who only visit Southern Area service users would be assigned to Southern Area, and those who only visit supported living service users would probably be assigned to the supported living organisation. Historically, care workers who sometimes visit service users from more than one of these organisations would need to have been assigned to the DemoCare top-level organisation. But being required to put care workers into an organisation that sits above all of the service users that they can sometimes visit, some on a very occasional basis, is really not ideal. Consider a care worker who lives close to Hempstead Lodge. Their main role is to visit supported living clients at Hempstead. But as some of the Southern Area service users live nearby, they are also willing to visit those service users when the regular care worker is unavailable and the Southern Area office is unable to find other cover. Historically, to allow the occasional assignment of this care worker to Southern Area visits, it would have been necessary to assign them to a common ancestor of both the supported living and the Southern Area organisations, meaning that they would need to be assigned to the top-level DemoCare organisation. But doing this would have two significant downsides. The first is that every time an availability search is performed for any visit across the entire DemoCare service, this care worker will be considered as a potential assignee. This could result in them being assigned, whether accidentally or otherwise, not only to Hempstead Lodge events and, on a cover basis, to the occasional event for Southern Area service users, but also to events for Northern Area. The second downside concerns the plan. The plan, as you will probably know, is a calendar that has one row for each care worker who the current user is responsible for scheduling, together with rows for all of the unallocated events for their organisation or organisations. Exactly what is seen here depends upon the user's current context. As a coordinator who is responsible for Southern Area, I generally want my plan to show only care workers from the Southern Area organisation. After all, most of the time, these are the care workers who I will be using to fill and assign visits. To achieve this, I can set my context organisation to Southern Area, as I've done here. However, what about those occasional times when the regular care worker for one of my Southern Area clients is unavailable, and there is no cover available across all of Southern Area's other care workers? In this case, I'm going to need to cast the net wider, perhaps calling upon that one Hempstead Lodge care worker who is willing to also visit Southern Area clients when needed. But because that care worker belongs to an organisation in a different branch of the hierarchy, they aren't visible on my plan. To make them visible, I would need to switch my context to the top-level demo care organisation, as this is an ancestor of both Hempstead Lodge and Southern Area. But look, when I do this, I now see every care worker and every run across the entire demo care business, including several care workers from Northern Area who I should never be allocating to any of my Southern Area service users. To address these problems, the next version of Plait will introduce the concept of pool workers. A pool worker is someone who has expressed a willingness to visit service users from other areas or specialisms on an occasional basis, presumably when no one is available from the regular care worker team. For individual care workers, it is now possible to record willingness to work across organisations, and then for pool workers to be found when performing an availability search or when allocating visits from the plan. I'll demonstrate these new features using Will Kane, one of the care workers from DemoCare's Northern Area organisation. Let's suppose that Will lives close to the boundary between the Northern and Southern areas and has therefore expressed a willingness to visit Southern Area clients to provide cover when needed. To formalise his willingness to work across organisation branches, Will's care manager has already visited his employment tab and used this new also willing to work for field to specify which of DemoCare's organisations from other branches to that of Northern Area, his own organisation, that he is willing to provide cover for. Note that only leaf nodes can be selected here on the basis that these are where service users are assigned. You will notice that this also willing to work for field is provided for each of Will's contracts. This makes it possible to use a different grade and therefore, potentially, different pay rates for assignment to cover visits. Let's assume I am a care coordinator for Southern Area. On a day-to-day basis, I will be allocating visits to my service users, aiming to use care workers from Southern Area wherever possible. Catherine Earnshaw is one of my service users, and here we see that one of Catherine's visits tomorrow is unassigned. One way for me to assign this visit would be to double-click and type a question mark into this box. This performs an availability search for the event, finding all of the care workers and runs from the Southern Area organisation and all ancestor organisations that the event could be assigned to. Notice that Will's name does not appear when I do this. This is not because Will is unavailable, it's because he is from another branch of DemoCare's organisation hierarchy, and I have not yet chosen to include pool workers in my search. However, after reviewing the available care workers and runs from Southern Area, perhaps I decide that I really must cast the net wider and include care workers who have expressed willingness to cover my area on an occasional basis. To do this, I simply add a plus sign. So now I'm searching with question mark plus, though it would produce the same result if I just typed a plus. Notice how Will's name does now appear. This icon, alongside his name, reminds me that Will would be a pool worker for this event, as he is not part of the organisation branch, but has expressed a willingness to work for this organisation on a cover basis. Perhaps I've already spoken to Will to confirm his willingness to cover this visit. In this case, I'm not looking to search for any available assignee, I just want to assign Will. However, if I type the first few letters of Will's name here, he will not come up. Again, this is because I have not explicitly requested pool workers to be considered. To do that, I would need to end my search with a plus. So in this case, I would type WILL plus to find Will. I can now select Will and save this assignment. If I return to the event later, the plus icon will continue to be displayed alongside Will's name. Will's regular care manager will of course see this assignment on Will's calendar, and it will prevent him from being assigned to clashing work. Rather than assigning care workers to unfilled events by performing an availability search, another approach would be to use the plan calendar. As we saw earlier, when I open the plan calendar with my context organization set to Southern Area, I see a row for each of my Southern Area care workers and runs, and another row for the organization itself, where all of the unallocated and partially allocated visits are shown. These unallocated visits can be filled by dragging and dropping them onto the row for the care worker who will be covering that visit. But what if none of my Southern Area care workers are available? If I need to fall back on pool carers who have expressed a willingness to provide cover for my area, I can click on this Options button and select Include Pool Workers. Now we see rows not only for all of my Southern Area care workers, but also a row for each care worker from other organisation branches who have expressed a willingness to cover my area. This plus icon will identify those care workers. Now I can assign unallocated Southern Area visits to Will as necessary.